For the last part of your project, you're going to be working primarily on implementing the user interface that allows someone to play the game through the play game method. You can see that it's void because it actually prints things and makes changes. It doesn't return anything. And there are 3 other required helper methods: being able to clear the board, clear out all seeds on the board, count up the total number of seeds on the board, or to check if it is currently the end of the game based on the pits and which player's turn it is. Now, these are not necessarily the only helper methods that you'll want. You're free to write other ones. One suggestion would be, for instance, that you only have a single sow method so far. It might be a good idea to write a relay sow method that does a full turn for a player. But those are all up to you. I've written some tests for the required methods here, and the first thing that we'll test is the ability to check whether the game has ended. So when we run it, we can see 2 boards. The first board is a standard starting board, where each pit has the same number of seeds. And if we check, it should report that it is not the end of the game if it's player 1's turn, because they have some moves they can make, and it is not the end of the game if it is player 2's turn, because likewise they have some moves they can make. But we've also tested with a new board where one of the rows is empty, player 1's row. So when we look a little further down, if it was player 1's turn, then it is the end of the game. True, it is end of game. If it is player 2's turn, however, player 2 does have some moves, and so check endgame would return false, because it is not the end of the game in that case. So let's comment those tests back out and start to test one of our other methods, the total number of seeds on the board. So we've only got one board at a time. It's relatively simple to test. We'll run it for that new board where there's only a couple of pits that have seeds. In this case, it reports that there are 7 seeds on the board. You'll of course want to test it with other values where each pit has some different amount of seeds or things like that, but it's a good start. Then we've got the clear board method, which should take away all of the seeds remaining on the board. So in this case, it will only empty out those bottom 2 items that had some seeds in them. It's the same size of board, all the labels are the same, just those spaces emptied out. Then the big test, playing the game. So I've set up a very small, simple board that has 2 pits per row and 4 seeds in each pit to start with, and I've started the game with that. I've said that player 1 score is 0, player 2 score is 0, and we'll start it out as player 1's turn. Again, you'll want to test with different settings for who goes first. But when I go to run this, it should show me the start of an actual game, where it's marked whose turn it is, it shows labels only for the player whose turn it is, and if I choose a pit, here's what we'll see. We will see that when I chose the pit, it picked up the seeds from pit A, and it sowed them around the board counterclockwise, so down below, to the right, and then up to B, and over to A, and it ends in A. Now that should also give us some extra information, because since it ended on player 1's row during player 1's turn, and there are seeds across the way from there, then player 1 captures both of those, and you can see their store updated and that those pits got emptied out. Now player 2 has only one choice, and that is pit D. They sow from pit D, and we can see this generated a relay sow. So in the first case, it sowed in counterclockwise order around to B, then A, then C, then D, and then back to B. This was not an empty pit, so the 7 that were in that spot then get picked up and are sown around again. So those get sown in A, C, D, B, A, C, and then they end in D. That's marked with the asterisk, by the way. So there's another relay sow from there, and then finally it's sewed into an empty pit. I'm sorry, one more relay sow, and then it's sewed into an empty pit where it was 1 into player 2's row and 5 across the way in player 1's row. So player 2 gets the seeds, captures the seeds there. Player 1 again has only one choice, so we'll play from B. That leads to an end of turn where they did not capture any seeds. Player 2 has 2 choices now, and this is where they've sown from the pit that had 2, C. That ended them up in B, but it was a non-empty pit, so we have a relay sow. That ended them up in C again. This time they captured the ones in C and the one across. Sorry, the one in C and the one across. That left player 1's row empty. So when player 1's turn came around, they had no turns. Player 2 gets the 2 remaining seeds in their row. That gives them a score of 10, while player 1 only had 6. So player 2 wins. So this is a short game, but it illustrates at least a few of the concepts: the relay sows, how scoring is done, and how we see when the end of the game happens, the process finishes up.